Welcome to the Nighttime Show. I am your host, Stephen Kramer Glickman. Here with me always is Matt Walker, the son of a bitch of sons of bitches. And we are here recording our show at Genghis Cohen in the heart of Hollywood. Our guest today, you may know him from the film Bachelor Party or House Party or the TV show Curb Your Enthusiasm or lots of other amazing things. He was on Friends, but this guy performed on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. And this guy is an incredible stand-up comedian. I'm a huge fan, been a fan for a very long time. Ladies and gentlemen, Barry Diamond is here.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Oh, let me applaud for me also.
Yes, please
Thank you so much, Stephen. It is such a testament to your good taste to have brought me down here to Genghis Cohen.
Where the egg rolls...
Where the egg rolls roll. Where the egg rolls really roll.
They really roll here. It's great. I got to meet you the other day for the first time, just recently at the Improv. We ran into each other.
I popped into the Improv.
Oh yeah. You got up on stage, and I was like, "Oh my God, that's fucking Barry Diamond."
You're like, "Oh my God, that's Pat Buckles."
Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm gonna have a small heart attack.
I can't believe it's happening.
Oh my God,
believe it's happening.
Oh my God, Mr. Glickman. I'm very happy to be here, and especially looking forward to cashing in my podcast check when this show is over.
Absolutely. I'm sure, and it's going to be a big check.
I'm looking forward to the big numbers, which I always enjoy seeing, and for the benefit of my family, who I support in North Korea.
There will be a lot of zeros before the decimal point.
Right. That is true.
Yeah, just on the left end of the number.
It's the thought that counts. It's never been about the money for me. It's always been about the thought and the sentiment of the little people who I had to crush to get to where I am today here at the Genghis Cohen show. I used to live here in Hollywood.
Did you really?
When I was a young man, I lived here in Hollywood. I tore up a lot of pudding in this town, man. When I was a young man.
Where did you live exactly?
I lived in the Hollywood State Penitentiary. I lived in Hollywood for a long time. I came out here in 1908.
Oh, my God.
1908 I came out here. I was 35 years old.
Oh, my God.
I came out here. We didn't have airplanes, of course, back then. We came out on a stagecoach.
Sure, of course.
I left New York in 1903.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Took me 5 years to get out here.
Did you get stuck in Donner Pass? Did you have to eat some people on the way out?
No. Fortunately, we missed the Donner Pass. We had very, very good weather, but there were Indian attacks.
Oh, sure.
There were Indian attacks all across the country.
I believe the correct term is Native Indians.
Did I say Indian attacks? Because that is not what I meant. I meant
indigenous people, Stephen.
The indigenous the natives.
Natives.
Yeah,
You got attacked by natives.
They captured our school marm on one of the stagecoaches.
Oh, no.
But we picked up another one in El Paso.
That's for the best.
Because they're all over the place. Who cares?
Yeah, they grow on trees out there.
Then we came out here in 1908 to West Hollywood, which was still, at that time, a thriving gay community. I don't know. It's way ahead of its time, that neighborhood. I don't know.
You still do see a lot of people dressed like it's 1908 because they're like cowboys walking around.
Well, yeah. It's
overalls, giant floppy hats.
Yeah.
Like they're about to go gold mining.
Chaps with the tushy cut out.
Fucking hipsters.
Yeah, those big
1850s
beards they all have now.
Yeah,
I love it. I love it.
I'm sure.
No, I came out here in 1978, September 11th, 1978. I came out here.
Wow.
I had a development deal with Norman Lear's production company. Norman Lear saw me at the Improv in New York.
Oh, my God.
And gave me a development deal for $50,000 to develop a show for me.
Wow.
For CBS. And this is back in 1978.
That's like 10 times the money they give people for those deals now.
Yeah. Actually, 50 was 1978. They were giving out development deals to comedians back then, like candy, because Robin Williams started a phenomenon with Mork and Mindy that they just started looking for stand-up comedians to star in situation comedies. And Norman Lear saw me in New York and flew me out to L.A., and gave me a $50,000 development deal, and I did virtually nothing for 6 months, and I've been trying to find that same work ever since.
Yeah.
It's not easy to find.
Holy crap.
And Alan Thicke was commissioned. Alan Thicke, may he rest in peace.
Yeah.
Was commissioned to write me a show for CBS called Singles Complex. I don't think he had his heart in it, actually. God rest his soul. But CBS never picked it up. And then I did movies and television, The Tonight Show, and
Yeah, I mean, you.
So how long had you been doing comedy before you got that deal?
I've been doing comedy since 1911.
Wow.
I came out in 1908. I worked I worked on the railroad with Chinese people.
Sure.
Who I recognized some of them from this restaurant.
Absolutely. Well, it's understandable.
And then 3 years later, I said, "This is backbreaking, crazy work for, a Jew from New York."
Of course.
So I said, "Comedy."
You're in the sun all day.
That's what I said. I started out with Max Sennett and the Keystone Cops and Fatty Arbuckle.
That's who Glickman's modeled his career.
But the important thing is that when I was a child, I made a pact with the devil for eternal life and youth in exchange for my immortal soul.
So he gave you the life
How do you
part.
get? How do you get that gig?
In exchange for my immortal soul and some cash.
That's great. I love it. When did you start doing stand up in New York City?
Yes. Yeah, I started. The first time I ever did stand-up comedy, the first time I ever got on stage was in college.
Yeah.
I went to college I grew up in New York, in the Bronx, and I went to college at a small school in Alabama called Troy State University.
Oh, yeah.
Which is now Troy University.
Wow.
But when I went there, it was called Troy State University. The reason I went there is because my grades out of high school were so high that most of the major universities in this country were actually intimidated to accept me. They said, this guy can't possibly be this brilliant. So I wound up at a small suitcase college in Alabama.
As you do.
No, actually, my grades were terrible. They were really bad. I can't believe I got out of high school.
What did you?
I majored in high school. I majored in fucking around.
What did
now,
you?
my favorite thing, by the way, about Troy State University is that
Yeah.
they have a mascot there, and the name of the mascot is T. Roy. Which is a real
Is that
thing.
true?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, there's a mascot for Troy that is T. Roy.
Oh, that's really weird.
Yeah.
When I went to school there, they're called the Trojans
Yeah.
now, which makes sense. It's Troy. They should be called
Yeah.
the Trojans.
Right.
When I went to school there, they were called the Red Wave because the University of Alabama was called the Crimson Tide. So Troy State, the president of the university, coincidentally happened to have been roommates with George Wallace in college. So he was totally enamored,
Yeah.
in rapture with the University of Alabama Crimson Tide.
Yeah.
So he designated the theme of Troy State to be the Red Wave.
Wow.
And we're talking about the segregationist politician George Wallace, not the legendary comedian George Wallace, because
Yeah,
those are two very different things.
Different comic. Different person.
He handed me my diploma, George Wallace.
wow.
And he was in a wheelchair after he had gotten shot
Mm-hmm.
because his daughter graduated from Troy in my same class. But George Wallace was roommates with Ralph Adams, who was the president of my university. Ralph Adams was as big an imbecile. Was a guy who just wandered into the presidency of a small university because he was friends with George Wallace. So anyway, I went to school there, and I was always very funny, and everybody knew how funny I was. And somebody suggested that the next time we have a concert at college,
Yeah.
that maybe I'd get up and I'd do some stand-up comedy.
Wow.
Which I thought was not a bad idea until
Yeah.
I actually did it. Anyway, the next concert to come to my college was the Allman Brothers Band.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my God.
And this was February 8th, 1971.
So that's peak Allman right there. That's when
Allman Brothers were arguably maybe the hottest band in the
Yeah.
country.
Yeah.
I mean, they were just coming off the Fillmore East and just an explosively incredible band.
It's a huge band.
Yeah, well, they always have been, but that was when they really broke. Anyway, they had an off-night gig at my school, and I wrote some material that I thought would be funny. I wrote this parody of what was that movie with Dustin Hoffman and
The Graduate?
Midnight Cowboy.
Oh, Midnight
Cowboy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I did a parody about what the characters that Joe Buck would really meet if he came to New York. So anyway, the day of the concert, I went over to the student government. I said I wanted to do a stand-up comedy routine when the Allman Brothers take a break tonight during the show. And I said, is that okay? And they said, well, it's not up to us. It's up to the Allman Brothers. And I said, well, where are they? He said, well, they're in the gym setting up. And they were.
They were setting up their own stuff?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Them and their roadies.
their
roadies
team,
were setting up their own stuff. So I go over to the gym, and I go over to Dwayne Allman, and I said, Dwayne, my name is Barry Diamond. I'm a comedian from New York. And I go
And
to
that song played.
I said, I'm a comedian from New York, and I go to school here. And I was wondering if it's okay if I did a set when you guys take a break. And he looked at me and he said, well, we don't take a break. And I looked at him and I said, I swear to God, I said, well, would you?
Holy shit.
And he looks at me and he turns around and he looks at the other guys setting up and he goes, this kid goes to school here. He's a comedian. He says he wants to know if he could do a set if we take a break. He says, you guys want to take a break? And they all kind of looked at each other, and they said, yeah, okay. I swear to God.
Oh, my God.
And that's how the intermission came to be.
I swear to God.
Oh, my God.
That was the first intermission in history.
No, this is not over yet. So,
no.
So I leave the gym. I go back to my dorm room, and I'm getting ready for the show for that night. Now, that the school population was about 3,000. And there had to be at least 5,000 or 6,000 in the gym.
Yeah.
For the show that night. And my only reference as far as what to wear, as far as a stand-up comedian, was that you get dressed up. You put on a suit and tie, you know.
Yeah.
And this is 1971, and the height of hippies, and everybody is in jeans and tie-dyed shirts and dropping acid and drinking Boone's Farm wine and smoking pot. And I show up in a suit and tie, and I go backstage, and the Allman Brothers. It's in the middle of the show, and the heat in the gym was over. You thought you were in like a sauna.
Yeah,
it was so hot in there, and I go backstage, and the stage manager says, "Can I help you?" And I said, "Yes." I'm going to go on, and I'm going to do a stand-up set. And he goes, "Here?" And I said, yeah. He says, "You're going out there?" I said, "Yeah, I spoke to the Allman Brothers earlier. They said I could do a set when they take a break." So they're in the middle of a 16-minute tied to a whipping post frenzy. The audience is in rapture. And then at the end of the song, the house lights come up and the band walks off. And the stage manager introduces, please welcome a comedian from New York. Please welcome Barry Diamond. I walk out, and the audience is literally in shock. They can't believe this is happening. They can't believe that in the middle of this amazing concert.
Oh my God!
There's a guy on stage in a suit and tie
so great.
Who's doing jokes, goofing on the South. We're in Alabama.
Oh my God!
And I did this one routine about picking up a date at her house to go out, and everybody's reading cartoons out of the newspaper, and they're just a bunch of goobers. And I was on stage, I don't know, for maybe, it could have been 5 minutes, 8 minutes, and just shortly after I got there and I started whatever I was doing, they started screaming at me. They started screaming, "Get off, you suck. This is bullshit. Says, get the fuck off. Somebody get him off." Somebody's yelling, "Somebody shoot me. Somebody fucking shoot me. Who is this guy?" And they're throwing Boone's Farm bottles. They're throwing Boone's, and there's 6,000 people out there. I'm not shitting you, 6,000. And all of a sudden, the student advisor, student faculty advisor, comes up on stage. He was a 50-something-year-old preacher. His name was Marvin Vickers. I'll never forget it. Marvin Vickers. He comes up. He puts his arm around me, and he says, "I think you've had enough, son." he said, "I think you've had enough, son." And I look out at the audience. I don't know what to say. And I said, "Well, I guess I'll come back when we have a more mature audience."
Oh,
And
great.
then the Allman Brothers walk out, and I'm walking off, and Greg Allman grabs the microphone. He points toward me, and he says, "Ladies and gentlemen, a true citizen." I don't know what that meant. I don't know what that meant. I don't know what he meant by it. But all I know is I walked out of the back door of the gym. I walked back to my dorm, and I didn't go to class for about 2 weeks. I didn't leave the dorm room.
Oh my God.
Because it was so
That's
humiliating.
so brutal.
And then when I did go back to classes, I'd walk in the class. I go, "Did anybody see the Allman Brothers concert? Did anybody see the Allman Brothers?" And I was apologizing.
Oh my God.
How did you not just like pack up and just leave back to New York like the very next day?
It was good preparation for me for doing stand-up
I mean,
comedy.
there's nowhere to go but up from there.
Yeah,
I guess.
exactly. I mean, when you go
But
out,
such an
the
epic.
first time you ever attempt to do stand-up comedy, to do it in front of 6,000 people in the middle of arguably the hottest rock and roll band in the country.
Because like the level of difficulty, I mean, George Carlin could have gone out there and they'd have people yelling at him just because of the
Absolutely.
situation.
Let me tell you, Jesus Christ could have walked out there and been funny as hell, and they would have castrated him.
Yeah.
Well, Sam Kinison once had Ralphie May. Do you ever hear that story where he had Ralphie May open for him?
Mm-hmm.
And
He used to open for me.
Kinison or Ralphie?
Actually, both of them. Both of
Oh
them
my
used to open
God.
for me. Ralphie and Sam.
Oh my God! Yeah, Sam said to Ralphie, you go out there."
No, they're both
and
dead.
You said, yeah,
Yes.
they're both dead. And he said, "You go out there and you call them, motherfuckers, and you tell them this, and you say this, and you say that," and gave him a bunch of things to say. And then Ralphie May went out on stage and said all those things and got booed, and people were throwing things at him. And then Sam came running onto the stage with a mic, going, "Who the fuck does this guy think he is, talking like this and this son of a bitch?" And like set him up to fail so that he would like crush, and then afterwards apologize to Ralphie for doing it to him. But it was like a thing that I think having an epic fail like that, having like a show where you perform and it could not possibly go worse, is just. It's such
We've all had 'em.
We've all had them, but there's such enormous, life building blocks to like what we do as comedians, what we try to accomplish and shit. Like,
I think I've just about.
it's such a ballsy thing for you to do too.
I mean, I've done so many tens of thousands of shows all over the world. Some of them really just stand out as being very, very unique. I did a show once in Australia, in Perth. In Perth, Australia, I swear to God.
That's the Alabama of Australia,
Well,
basically.
Alabama should look so good. But I did a show to no people, nobody.
Nobody.
Nobody. I was on tour, and I was in Sydney, and some friends of mine said they said, "You want to go out to Perth and do some gigs?" There's a guy who's got some gigs out in Perth, and if you want to go out there. He's looking for somebody. And I'd never been to Perth, and I figured, what the hell,
And
somebody's going to
if you're
pay
in
for
Sydney,
it.
that's like going from L.A. to Miami.
No, like L.A., it's like New York to L.A.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perth is on the other side of on the Indian Ocean. So I figured, it was the guy. I called the guy. He said it's 5 shows. It's $600 a show. So you'll make $3,000 for the week. And he says you could stay at my house, and you just got to pay your airfare. So I said, okay, it sounds good. So I fly out to Perth, and I have this kid pick me up. This about 17-year-old kid who wanted to be a stand-up comedian really bad, and the kid was really just out of his mind, nuts. I go back to his house. He's got like a cot set up, literally a cot, like a medical cot set up, sleep on in his kitchen. I said, hey, man, I can't do this. I said, look, I'll stay here tonight because it's like 11 o'clock at night already. He picked me up at the airport. He said, but tomorrow I'm going to a hotel. So he says, okay. So the next day I go to a hotel on the beach. It was fabulous, and we do a couple of dates and at some pubs, and everything's going well. One night we take a taxi to a pub, and we're talking to the cab driver, and I tell him I'm about to do a show at this comedy club at this pub, and he goes, oh, yeah, I love comedy, mate. He says, can I come in? You can watch the show? And I said, yeah, sure, come on in, man. Park the car and come on in.
Yeah.
So he parks the car, and we go into the club, and I'm at the bar having a drink, and I take a look up at the stage, and the cab driver's up on stage doing stand-up comedy.
What?
I swear to God.
Oh, my God.
I don't know, they had like an open mic or something, and the cab driver gets up, and now he's doing stand-up comedy. So the next night, we go to a restaurant where I'm supposed to do a show at 8 o'clock. And we pull into the parking lot, and it's empty. Parking lot is empty. And I said, this does not look good. I said, I'm supposed to do a show here. So there's a sign in the restaurant window that says they're doing a comedy show at this time. I walk in. There's nobody in the restaurant. And it's 8 o'clock. And I walk in, and there's nobody there except the woman who owns the restaurant is sitting at a table doing some paperwork or something. And I walk over to her with this jerk idiot guy who brought me out there. And I said, I'm Barry Diamond. I'm supposed to be doing a comedy show here at 8 o'clock. And there's nobody here. So where is everybody? She says, well, I guess they're not coming. So I'm thinking, well, okay, they're not coming. I'm here. I'm supposed to get $600 for being here.
Yeah.
If there's a show or not a show, I'm here. Theoretically, I came, thousands of miles from Los Angeles to do this show.
Right.
So I said, well, there's nobody here. I guess, we're not going to do a show. So I guess, you might want to just, pay me for being here. And I guess just write it off, I guess. And she goes, well, I'm not paying you to not do a show. And I said, well, there's nobody here. And she goes, well, I see there's nobody here, but I'm not gonna pay you to not do anything. And I said, well, do you really want me to go up? If I go up and do a show, I said, you're gonna pay me my $600? She says, well, I'm not gonna give it to you for nothing. And I said, listen, why don't you just save me the embarrassment and the humiliation? Because if that's the only way that you're going to pay me, I'm going to go up and I'm going to do my show. Even though there's nobody here to get the money that I'm supposed to get. She says, well, then go up and do your show.
Oh, shit.
So I said to the guy who brought me out there, I said, hey, prick. I said, get up and introduce me. I says, go up on stage and introduce me.
Amazing.
And he says, introduce you. He says, there's nobody here. And I said, I know that. I just had this conversation with this woman that there's nobody here. I says, go up and give me if I'm going to go up and do a set, says, you give me a proper introduction.
Yeah.
So he goes, all right. He goes up on stage. And he does 20 minutes.
He warms them up for you.
He does 20 minutes. And I'm thinking to myself, this guy is more out of his mind than I am. I'm sitting there, and I just can't believe what's going on. and I yelled up at him, and I said, hey, bring me up, man. What are you doing? So he goes, oh yeah, mate. So I forgot about you. So he introduces me. I go up on stage. There's nobody there. She isn't even there. She's in the kitchen now. Every 10 minutes, I would see the door swing open. She'd pop her head out to make sure that I'm still on the clock. So I was up there.
Did you do an hour? Or?
I did 40 minutes.
40. Wow.
I did 40 minutes, and I'm talking to people like there's people in the crowd. I'm asking who's got birthdays.
Oh,
I said, anybody here from out of town? And anybody who would have walked in there would have just thrown a net over me.
Yeah.
I did about 40 minutes, and I'll tell you something. It was one of the greatest shows that I ever had. And I discovered from that show that when people actually show up for the show, that it fucks up my show. But I swear to God, she made me, and then if she wouldn't have paid me, I swear to God, I would have burned down that fucking restaurant.
Oh my God, that is so amazing. Oh my God.
Yeah, I loved working in Australia.
That's hilarious. So did you stay out there and do the rest of the shows? Or
I've been out there a number of times. I've been all over Australia.
I just had a show that I had booked where it was like the first time this has ever happened to me, where I booked a show. I booked great comics on the show here in town at a great venue. It was not a comedy club. It was like just a bar, but it's a bar that I've seen packed out. I advertised a little bit. I pushed, on the internet and did the things. And I got there and I was sitting, and it was getting later and later. Mm-hmm. And finally, 8:00. It's time for the show, and there's just the bartender is there. and I said, I gotta cancel. Like I didn't even realize, like, oh my God, I have to start texting people and telling not to come. And so I'm start writing people as quickly as I can. But then comics are like 2 comics showed up and were like, what is happening right now? Was there a bomb scare? Like there was no one in the bar and there was no one upstairs in this room.
Well, you were doing the show. There was a bomb scare.
Oh, thanks. But I was just like, oh, this is so brutal.
Where was this place?
It was I don't want to say because it's a fine. I've been there for great shows.
It's a fine dining restaurant.
It's a fine dining restaurant. But I asked the bartender. I go, how does this happen? Has this happened before? She goes, oh, you mean shows getting canceled right at the last minute? I go, yeah. She goes, oh, yeah, all the time. And I was like, great. Yeah, that would have been good to know before I had to, like, embarrass myself and invite a bunch of people and then have to, like, cancel it. So then I moved the show over to the Laugh Factory, and so now I'm doing it at a comedy club, because at a comedy club there's at least people go to a comedy club whether there's no matter who's at the club in town. Like people just go to clubs, but at bars, like putting on a stand-up comedy show at a bar is fucking tricky. Like that takes a ton of work. It's because people aren't normally just gonna be there. I don't know. Matt's done shows, and Matt does shows at bars, and people fucking come out. I don't know how you do things, Matt.
How do you do things,
Matt? How do you do things?
How do you do the things you do,
Matt? How do you do the things?
You just have to know degenerates that like to go to dive
your
bars.
Magnificence.
Yeah. Tell us about your magnificence.
Just get
Matt.
to know degenerates who want to go to dive bars, and then they'll come to your dive bar show because they just want to go drink.
That's a good.
And then you throw comedy at them while they're drinking, which is their primary purpose for being there.
Okay.
You subject them to a comedy show while they're there to drink.
Well, they used to do a comedy show in Venice, the place where they have the turtle races. What's it? What was the name of it?
I know the place you're talking about. It's not Larry's. It's
not there. It's not there anymore. But
yeah,
they used to have turtle races there.
Oh yeah,
for years.
There's a place called the Venice Underground that I've done shows at
on Wednesday night.
Yeah. Have you done that show? You
Yeah.
need to go do that show. That show's fantastic.
Yeah, it is. They bring in a great crowd.
Yeah, and it's in a basement, and you're like, and then you go and it's packed. I love when people do stuff like that. That's Bronston Jones' show.
Yeah, that building's over 100 years old.
Oh my God!
They used to bootleg whiskey. They had tunnels because it's right on the boardwalk.
Yeah.
They had underground tunnels that went out to the water, that they would bootleg whiskey and tunnel it out under the beach to boats out on on the water and ship it someplace else.
There's a lot of
Or
fake
ship it in. They're shipping it in or shipping it out.
There's a lot of fake bootleg places these days.
Fake speakeasies.
Fake speakeasies.
That's a hipster thing now.
Oh,
yeah.
that's such a huge hipster
They're like,
thing.
oh, come to this bar, and then like you go there, and it's like it looks like a laundromat, and then you got to like punch in a code on this one machine, and then like the laundry door opens, and then you can go inside, and there's a
fucking
bookcase
hipsters.
that then
Like,
slides
Enough
aside, and
already.
there's a bar.
Just go
and
to
it's
a
like,
bar.
You mean, are these after hours places?
No, they're just regular places.
They're just
all
like-
over Hollywood.
They're just like, this will be cool.
No, people think it's terrific. Oh, you go into a garage and then there's a refrigerator. You open the refrigerator, it's the door into the bar. Enough already. Just let me into the bar. I just want a drink.
So these are private residences?
They're
They're businesses.
They're
They're just-
fake.
yeah.
They're fake speakeasies.
Yeah.
There's one in Hollywood. I'm not kidding you. You go into a hotel room. It looks like a hotel room. You walk in. There's a beautiful woman sitting on a bed in a hotel room. And she goes, "Are you here for a sexy time?" And you go, "Yes." And she goes, "Good." She presses a button. The bed moves into the wall. And you go down a stairway into a bar where you buy a martini for $46.
Yeah.
It is a fucking... It's the opposite of what the whole point of a bar is in the first place. Like, you go to a bar to get a woman in a room. You don't go to a room with a woman to go to a bar. That doesn't make any sense. You were on a lot of television shows and in a lot of movies, and you've currently been in a lot of shows and a lot of movies. But there is a couple that I want to bring up, because there are TV shows that are a huge part of my childhood that are like embedded into my brain that I don't know anything about, like what it was like to do a show like this. Diff'rent Strokes. You were on that show.
Yeah.
You got to tell me about what it was like doing that show.
Well, I didn't molest any of the kids. I just want to make that clear. I didn't touch
That was
the-
it was Gordon Jump that molested Dudley.
Oh,
Yeah.
God.
Yeah.
You remember the character name?
No, that's the actor. He was then the Maytag repairman, and he was also the boss on WKRP in Cincinnati.
Wait, that's...
Gordon Jump.
Oh, dear God. Man.
Is everybody dead from that show?
Everybody.
Pretty much, yeah, because Charlotte Ray
Everyone.
just died. So Conrad Bain's been dead for a long time.
Conrad
Right.
Baines.
I mean,
What about,
what's his face? Willis is still
Todd
alive.
Bridges.
Todd
still
Bridges
alive?
is alive.
Todd Bridges.
Todd Bridges outlived everybody.
Yeah.
Todd Bridges, the only one that had a drug problem.
Right.
No, he wasn't the only one. With the
No,
drug
they
problem.
all had. Yeah,
I mean, you're looking at Dana Plato's photo right there.
Yeah,
oh
Jane-
yeah.
yeah.
Mary Jo. She's still alive.
But
Mary
what's his
Jo?
name? Conrad Bain didn't have a drug problem, did he?
No.
No,
Yeah, Dixie Carter.
he was great on Maude, Conrad
Oh
Bain.
my God.
Yeah.
So tell me about taping an episode of that show. Did you who did you?
I
who did you play?
I played their tutor.
Mm-hmm.
But my name was Danny. This was when I first came out to L.A. This had to be 1978 or the beginning of 79.
Yeah, 79.
And that was
79.
shot out here in L.A.
Yeah. It was a tandem show. It was a Norman Lear show, and Norman Lear flew me out. So naturally, he wanted to put me in some of his shows that he already had on the air.
Was
Build
that
up
the
some-
same? Was that the same deal with Bosom Buddies? Was that a Norman?
No,
Lear show too?
no. That was Chris Thompson.
Oh wow.
So he was like trying to build some Barry Diamond buzz to get people like you.
Right.
Because he did that a lot. Because a lot of his shows were either spin-offs from one another, or they were
Yes.
just the same actors you'd seen
Yeah.
and everything else.
Robin spun off of Happy Days.
Yeah.
Right.
When he played Mork from Mork on Happy Days.
Yeah.
And the first time I met Robin was just before Mork aired. I met Robin in August of 78, just before I came out here. And I was at the Improv in New York, and I was hosting the show. And Elaine Boozler came in with Robin Williams, and they were dating at the time, apparently. And Elaine said to put Robin on next, because he's got a show coming out next month on ABC. So none of us, the comics, had ever seen Robin before, and I was standing there with Larry David and Jerry Seinfeld, some other comics, and this guy comes into New York from L.A., and Elaine said to put him on, so I put him on next, and we're all standing in the back watching Robin for the first time ever in August of 78. And it was amazing. It was amazing. As I remember standing in the back of the room, and Larry David says to me, he says, he's not using the mic. because he didn't.
Yeah.
And there was a small room, the Improv in New York, and he just got up on stage and then just flew off the stage, and he's going around the room doing soliloquies from Hamlet and just improvising and just going nuts. And we'd never seen anybody do this in a stand-up comedy routine. Never saw anybody do anything like this.
Wow.
And we're all standing back there and watching this guy. And I had signed my deal to come out to L.A. next month, and I had never been out to L.A. And I said to Larry David, I said, man, if everybody in L.A. is anything near as good as this guy, I says maybe I should stay here. And he was amazing, man. There's never been anybody like him before or since. The only one that was ever anything like him was Jonathan Winters, who was Robin idolized Jonathan. So did I. He was my inspiration. If you don't know who Jonathan Winters is and you're listening, you should YouTube him. Yeah. Because prior to Robin,
there had never really been a comedian like Jonathan who was doing voices.
Nobody.
Who was doing
it's
improv.
Not the voices. It's to go out on national television and not have a
just wing it.
A solid 5, 6, 7 minutes that you know that you're going to do, and to just improvise. It was no other comedian would even think of doing such a thing.
Yeah, I mean, today you wouldn't be allowed to do that thing because they're going to be like, we want to know every syllable you're going to say before you go on television, and we're going to run it through our legal department.
Absolutely. There's things that you used to be able to do on TV that you could not do today. You couldn't do All in the Family today.
Oh, definitely not.
No.
You couldn't do Maude today. I watched that show because it's on rerun still, and it's like they did a whole episode about B. Arthur having an abortion. And it's like they would never do that on a sitcom.
No.
Yeah. No, that was it's definitely, I feel like it's, television's definitely kind of changed for the worse in a lot of ways. Like, we were able to get away with so much more stuff. When I was a kid, there was so much stuff that was incredible on TV. Like, I mean, there are, when people say All in the Family could never get made today, like to people who are listening to the show, like we're talking about like the entire show, like every episode. Like go if you can go back and watch selected episodes, they did crazy stuff on that show.
To me, it was absolutely, arguably, the greatest sitcom of all time. Because what I thought was extraordinary about All in the Family is in the same episode, in the same 30-minute episode, they can have you laughing hysterically and just crying, openly weeping. Yeah. If in 30 minutes, in 23 minutes, less commercials, if you can get a television audience to go through that range of emotions, there's no other show that I know of ever in the history of television comedy where you can go through that range of pathos and sadness to joy and exuberance in 23 minutes. And in that show, sometimes they hit it, and it was just amazing.
I feel like other shows that have been credited to be kind of similar to like to pushing boundaries kind of get, maybe they'll have an episode and 1-2 episodes maybe that are groundbreaking episodes, but then either they'll get corrupted over time, or they'll get the lead will get super power hungry and fuck it all up, or hire their husband to write on the show.
To do something like this consistently week after week, to put out a show like this consistently is extraordinary.
Yeah,
it's almost miraculous.
And that show got knocked off in so many ways. In fact, I watch weird TV channels that have old shows on them all the time. I watched a cartoon the other day that apparently they only made 8 episodes of, and it was a cartoon bear family that was based on All in the Family. So the guy playing the dad bear was doing a Carol O'Connor impression, and the person playing the mom is Rick Dees' wife.
Oh my God!
Is back before she was married to Rick Dees, I guess. And this is like from like 1975, I want to say.
Yeah.
And like they just did weird stuff where they're like, oh, this is popular, let's make our own version of it, but we'll make them cartoon bears. Like that's going to capture the magic.
Totally side note, but just to mention this morning I was watching a bunch of Patty Coke Junction, a bunch of these shows, and then left the room, and I was sitting in the other room editing at the computer and cutting trailer stuff. And while I'm sitting
Leaving
in the
your
other room,
dog to watch the show.
just letting the dogs watch TV, and I heard in the other room this voice, and it was this elderly woman's voice, and it was like, "Oh dear, this is the craziest thing I ever done seen in my whole life." It was like a voice like that, and I was like, did the dog switch the channel to what's it called, to like Bugs Bunny or something like this? And I was convinced that they were watching cartoons in the other room, and I walked back in. And it was Stagecoach, the show Stagecoach, and I was like, "Oh no!" So
that's what they're making fun of.
That's what that's what they were making fun of on on those shows. But like when you haven't heard it in so long, and you're just listening to it from the other room, you're like, "Oh, like the Granny, the voice of Granny from
the Beverly Hillbillies."
Yeah. No, from. The cat and the Tweety Bird.
Tweety and Sylvester.
Yeah, Granny from that thing. That woman's voice was being ripped off from older episodes of stuff, and you're just like, my God, it's but it's bizarre. And
there was
amazing.
weird. I think one of the weirdest things is there was a Paul Lynde TV show where it was a sitcom where he played the father of a family with 2 teenage daughters, and he's like an overprotective dad. And I've seen an episode of that. And I'm like, this is the gayest man in the history of gay men.
Right.
Like in the 70s, we just pretended that didn't exist in some way.
Barry, we have to move on. I have to ask you about a Bachelor Party. What was the leap like from doing television shows and doing a couple movies, but then making a leap into
that was a big movie.
That was a big movie.
Yeah, I guess it was.
Was it a big? Did it feel like a big movie at the time?
It turned out to be kind of like a cult movie.
Got it. Yeah.
But it was a lot of fun to make. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
I think it was the first or second time I saw boobs on the movie.
Really?
That might have been the one. Bachelor Party, one of the first times.
Yeah.
It was either that or Stewardess School.
Oh.
Might have been number one. I don't remember.
That was that was an awful lot of fun. Yeah. I knew Tom Hanks from Bosom Buddies.
Yeah.
Because I guest starred on an episode of Bosom Buddies, and also my best friend was the exec producer and creator of Bosom Buddies. So I knew Tom Hanks from that, and originally it wasn't Tom Hanks, it was Paul Reiser that was cast.
Really?
Oh. Yeah, and they fired Paul, and they hired Tom, and actually the part that I had of Rudy was cast by a Hawaiian comedian named Andy Bumatai, and they just redid the whole. They started shooting, and they weren't happy with what they had, and they recast some of the larger roles. And I was lucky to have gotten the one that I got. But it was just a blast doing that. It was so much fun.
Do you feel like was there a movie or a job that you did that kind of set you up where suddenly it's Barry Diamond from this? Was that one of them that kind of locked in as a life credit?
No, but I mean, it was an important credit.
Yeah.
Maybe the most important credit that I've had that's done me the most is maybe in Seinfeld.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Guest starring role on Seinfeld, because
that's Pat Buckles. Yeah.
Yeah, and that opened up a lot of stand-up opportunities, especially in the UK and in Australia. They were crazy nuts about Seinfeld in Australia, and if you came out there to do some shows and you were on the show, you got all kinds of press.
So now,
Matt, you know the episode pretty well?
Yeah, you play sort of an annoying comedian.
Yeah.
On that. Now, was that based on an actual person that they knew? Like a lot of that show sort of seems to be based around real people.
There was a scene in the show where I share a cab with Jerry across town.
Oh
yeah.
My God.
And I play this obnoxious comedian. I share a cab with him. We're going over to I guess, to Catch a Rising Star from
Sure.
the Improv.
Yeah.
Because Catch a Rising Star was on the east side, the Improv was on the west side. And all the comics used to do sets at both clubs, and we would share cabs across town.
Yeah.
Because they paid us in cab money. When nobody got paid, they just give you cab money,
Like a
which
cab
is basically
voucher?
about $7
Yeah, sure.
back then. So if you shared a cab with somebody, then you got to keep half of it.
Yeah.
So in the cab, I asked Jerry when he's getting out of the cab if I could leave my raincoat at his house, which was from a real life thing with me and Larry David. Larry David lived in my building in Manhattan, a place called Manhattan Plaza, and directly across the hall from Larry, Kenny Kramer lived. So that's where the relationship for Seinfeld came from. That Larry David lived across the hall from this guy Kenny Kramer. So he juxtaposed Kramer in Seinfeld, and that's where the relationship came from. But I was living out in California when Larry was still living in New York, and I asked him, and my ex-wife lived upstairs, so I would come visit New York, and I didn't want to bring a coat with me from Los Angeles, so I asked Larry if I could leave my raincoat in his closet so that when I came back to New York from L.A., I would have a winter coat here, because I didn't want to leave with my wife, my ex-wife, because we weren't getting along too well.
I love it.
So that's where the whole thing came from at the end when Larry's getting out of the car. Says, "Can I leave my raincoat at your house?" Says, my closet is just full. If you could just give me some room to leave my raincoat. So that's where that came from. So much of it came from real life experiences.
Did you know
all
them
had.
pretty well when you were sort of coming up the ranks?
Yeah, we all started together. Larry and I were very, very good friends, and Jerry Seinfeld, Paul Reiser, oh God, Gilbert Gottfried.
Now, Gilbert, I've heard this about Gilbert
I
Gottfried.
love those guys.
I have heard that for years he had patio furniture in his apartment because he was too cheap to buy regular furniture.
He has a reputation for not being a particular spendthrift. Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, Gilbert was he was really, really unique. He was so funny. He was just so nuts. He was just like this crazy kid. You know, back when we started, he would take the waitresses' serving trays, and he would make like big
Like a tower of them?
like African lips that like he was
Jesus
talking
Christ.
like some jungle person, and he would just say crazy stuff, man. You never knew what Gilbert was going to do.
Wow. Unreal.
But it was such a great time, though, man. It was such a great time because there was no comedy explosion.
Right.
It was before the comedy explosion. I'm talking about 1975, 75, 76.
So at this point, did Bud already have an improv in Los Angeles, or did
No.
he just have the improv in New York?
No,
Yeah.
when I started at the Improv, which I guess was about 1975 or 6, Bud was in the process of opening up a club in Los Angeles. And I think he had been open in Los Angeles for about a year. When I first came out here in 78, I think he opened in like 77 on Melrose.
What was he like back then?
I remember the first time I met him. I was in high school. It was 1968, I think. The Improv had been open a few years, and I was going to high school with a classmate of mine was a guitar player, and he was like a junior in high school or something. And he was a guitar player, and he says, there's this club downtown called the Improv. He says, it's amazing. He says, I go down there and I play guitar and I accompany this singer. This guy's a professional singer. and I accompany him on the guitar. And it's comedians and singers, one right after the other.
Wow.
And it's just this small club on West 44th Street. And it's just great. He said Bill Cosby comes in there, Richard Pryor comes in there. He said Robert Klein comes in there, David Brenner, Rodney Dangerfield. He said it's amazing. So I went down there. I was 16 years old. I went down there with my older brother and his fiance and my girlfriend. And I'll never forget sitting in the booth and seeing Bud Friedman. He was like in a T-shirt and a goatee, and he's running the show. And I remember going into the showroom, and I saw Jimmy Walker. Jimmy Walker before
Good Times.
Before Good Times.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. He was just this crazy, tall, skinny, wiry black kid from the Bronx who was just nuts and very, very, very funny. And I saw, I don't remember who, I saw other acts that never, Lenny Schultz. Who nobody here would know, but Lenny was crazy. The comics used to love him. He used to do crazy stuff. He used to bring live animals on stage, and he used to do the Catskill Mountains in the summer up in upstate New York, and he had a midnight show on a Sunday night that everybody would go to. All of the entertainers from all over the Catskills. For those of you who don't know what the Catskills were, it was a gigantic entertainment vacation phenomenon in New York that rivaled probably Las Vegas back in the 1950s and early 60s.
It was like the Branson, Missouri of the East.
Yeah, but well, Branson, Missouri to me is like going to hell.
Well, I mean, you had guys.
That's where Yakov owns a theater there, man.
Not anymore.
He
No,
doesn't.
He did own a theater.
Yeah, he
right?
did.
Yeah.
He did own a theater there. I went there once to do a cruise ship showcase in Branson, and the shows are all in
Because they're like, let's get as far away from any possible cruise ships as you can go in America. Like, this is the most landlocked spot.
Well, they had auditions there because the audiences there
Yeah,
are
because they're cruise people.
The lowest common denominator of entertained audiences you're going to find anywhere.
Yeah.
You could bring out some kids with American flags and the audience will start weeping.
Yeah. Like, they want the most bland entertainment possible.
Yeah, but the bland, non-threatening, non-political, non-racial, tie a yellow ribbon, that kind of stuff, and just the most non-threatening stuff. Or if it
They're still buying Andy Williams records there.
Yeah, well, Andy Williams had a theater there for years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And all of the shows are in the afternoon.
Oh my God! Get out of here.
They're not. There's no evening shows.
They got to get to the buffet.
The shows are all matinees, and it's just RVs and pickup trucks and far right.
So it is hell. It's actually hell.
It's just the farthest. it's in the heart of the Bible Belt.
Yeah.
It's in the heart of the Bible Belt. It's just like born again Christians.
So Jews are welcome. And they're very excited about Jews.
As long as you're not identified as a Jew,
Right.
As long as you don't look like a Jew.
I remember when I did that show with Monty Hoffman, and he said, whatever you do, don't tell them that you're a Jew. We were up in Orville.
Could be Orville. I've done Orville.
Yeah. He was like, don't tell them you're Jewish. Whatever you do, don't tell them
Was
you're
that at
Jewish.
that casino?
At the casino.
Yeah, that's the one where, like, you can hear the slot machines because they're right next to the stage. So, like, you're trying to tell jokes, and it's like, ding, 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 ding.
Yeah. And the first because I'm such a defiant asshole, the first thing I did
I'm Jewish.
was say I'm Jewish. And I said something about being Jewish, and a guy in the audience goes, "You're a Jew?" And I went, "Yeah." And he goes, "You staying in this hotel?" And I said, "Uh-huh." And he goes, "What floor are you on?" And I said, "A different one." And he went, "Uh-huh." I'll see you after the show. And I was like, great. Looking forward to it. And then I quickly like got the fuck off the stage. And Monty was like, what the fuck is the matter with you? Why would you tell them that? I told you not to. This guy's going to try to fucking kill you now. Yeah, it was rough.
Where's that, in Northern California?
It's like in the middle of nowhere.
It's a casino?
Yeah, it's a casino.
Yeah, it was the Gold Country Casino.
That is what it is.
Yeah, which, by the way, the hotel itself is gorgeous. The bathrooms in that hotel were enormous. You had like a full-size hot tub in every room.
Really?
Wow.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great. Great to be in a hotel room with a giant bathtub with Monty Hoffman.
You were in the same room?
We had the same room.
See, I went with Muratori. We got separate rooms.
Oh, fuck you, Matt.
Yeah.
I remember I once did a show in the Catskills at a bungalow colony, which is a couple of levels below a hotel, where Jews from the city would come out in the summer and they spend this 2 months in a bungalow community in the country. And everybody, of course, knows each other. It's a little community that they have every year. And I remember I got a gig at this at a show at a bungalow colony, and the woman who introduced me, she begins her introduction by saying, "As you all know, my father passed away last week unexpectedly. I wanted to thank everyone for your outpouring of support for my father. It was so unexpected that he died. I loved him so much. And now I'd like to introduce a comedian from the city. Please welcome Barry Diamond." And I swear to God, I remember standing in the back of the room and just saying to myself out loud, I can't believe this is happening.
Yeah.
Oh,
I can't believe this is my introduction.
Basically, that exact thing happened to me. I did the National Indian Gaming Association convention, and they have like this tribute to all the Indians that had died in the last year, the members of their organization. They're showing their photos. This woman comes out. She sings Amazing Grace while these photos are up on the screen. And then the guy comes out and is like, and now we have comedians. And that was my intro. Then I just had to walk out and be like, hey, everybody, how you doing tonight? It was just like, I just ate a dick for 10 minutes, and then I brought up the guy who was headlining. It was just brutal.
My Native American name is Eating Dick with Red Hair.
Yes. Well, then I got paid $100, and then I went to an Indian casino, and I lost my $100 in like 10 minutes.
Great.
So it was
nailed it.
Yeah,
horrible.
The Lord giveth and taketh away.
I got another quick question for you. Oh, by the way,
I can't lend you any money if that's the question.
Damn it, Barry.
I knew you were going to ask to borrow money.
In Bud Friedman's new book that he just put out about the improv.
I didn't know he wrote a book. He did?
Yeah.
It's a terrific book about the club, and in the book, and it's got quotes and stories from different people and stuff, but for the most part, it's him writing. In the story, he said that, and this is I almost exactly verbatim. He said, "I will never forgive Jimmy Walker for being a traitor and trading from being an improv performer
to go to the comedy store?
at this comedy store, because once he was at the comedy store,
Yeah.
then Bud opened the Improv in L.A. and then was like, "Come on over. I gave you your start in New York." And Jimmy was like, "No, I'm going to stay at the."
I thought Jimmy was one of the investors in the in the improv.
He was, and he says even though he was an investor, he would not perform at our club because Mitzi
would not
made it like a thing, like you couldn't do both. So
yeah. Well, that was the thing.
Did you perform? I mean, I've seen your name on the building at the Comedy Store. Like, what was she like? What was it? Who was in your class of people at that time? And
oh man,
I know it's a lot. But
Everybody. When I came out here,
yeah,
I came out here in September '78, and the Improv was just trying to get started. And actually, they had a fire. They had a fire at the Improv. They closed down most of the club, and they kept open a small portion of it just to try to do shows in there. It was so horrible. But I came out here, from the Improv in New York.
Yeah.
And, of course, I expected to go on at the Improv out here in L.A., but the place really to get on at that time was the Comedy Store. Because everybody was on it. That was the Mecca back then.
Yeah.
And I remember going over to the Comedy Store and you had to get on there. I was working both places. I was working the Comedy Store and the Improv.
So that's what like Jay Leno and Dave Letterman and guys like
Yeah,
that.
but very, very few people did they allow to do that.
Mm-hmm.
It was so stupid, so petty.
Yeah.
It was so petty.
Yeah.
That they had, if you work here, you can't work there. And if you didn't, have any juice, you had to make a decision. I'm going to work at the Improv or I'm going to work at the Comedy Store.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people who just worked at one club and didn't work at the other club.
Was that more of something coming from Mitzi or was it coming from Bud?
It was coming from both of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It came from both. They were both resentful of comics working at the other club, and at the same time, both of the clubs contributed to the overwhelming success of both of the clubs.
Yeah.
Yeah, because in New York, Catch a Rising Star, Bud said that Catch a Rising
Same
Star...
thing in Catch.
That him and the owner of Catch, even though they were there was some playful rivalry, they were friends.
They did,
like
yeah.
the owners were friends,
Yeah.
and they would share. If someone fell out of one, they would send someone from the
Right,
other.
yeah.
It was okay. But
Yeah.
here... there was definitely some more rivalry. It was a bigger deal.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But they did get along better in New York at Catch a Rising Star. Rick Newman owned Catch a Rising Star, and Bud Friedman and his wife Silver owned the Improv. And comics used to go back and forth across town on a Friday and Saturday night, even during the week, to do both clubs, because there wasn't there weren't millions of comedians
Yeah.
back in the 1970s.
When
Yeah.
did you meet Robert Townsend? Because you've done quite a bit of work with him over the years.
I met him at the Improv here in LA, and he and I were very, very good friends and big fans of each other. He was a great guy. He was such a nice guy. So talented.
Yeah. I think he's on the same young comedian special with Kinnison and Roseanne, I think is the one that he's on.
Jeez.
Kinnison and Roseanne are on the same special? Was that Rodney
I think
Dangerfield?
so. Either that or
Rodney
Roseanne's
Dangerfield?
either on the one with Kinnison or she's on the one with Dice, and I can't remember which one. And it might even be the same one with those two. I've got the box set of them, and I mix them all up. But those are the Rodney Dangerfield hosted ones.
Do you know who did the first one? The first HBO special?
Who?
Well, the first HBO special ever was Robert Klein, right?
No, it was Freddie Prinze.
Oh, Freddie Prinze. Okay.
Really?
Freddie Prinze and Friends.
Did you know him?
Freddie?
Yeah.
No, but he absolutely was the reason why I started doing stand-up comedy, because we looked very, very much alike.
Really?
He grew up in the Bronx. I grew up in the Bronx. And after I graduated from college in Alabama, I was selling life insurance in Montgomery, Alabama. And I saw Freddie Prinze's first Tonight Show with Sammy Davis Jr. sitting on the panel. And Freddie came out and destroyed the place. And Johnny brought him over to the panel. And right then and there, your career is made.
Yeah.
And I'm watching Freddie. And he was Puerto Rican, half Puerto Rican, half Hungarian, and he's from Washington Heights, which is a predominantly Spanish neighborhood, and he's doing all these Spanish accents and stuff in his act, which I did, because I grew up in that same neighborhood basically, and I remember watching him and watching his success on that show. And I said to myself, if this guy can do it, I can do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I made a conscious decision. I was going to go back to New York, and I was going to go to the clubs. I knew where to go. I knew the Improv, and Catch a Rising Star, and I made a decision. I'm going to move back to New York and do this, and that's what I did.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Before we wrap things up, I have to ask you about doing the Tonight Show, because it's like the pinnacle for so many comedians.
Well, I did it with Johnny Carson.
Oh my God.
That's when it was the pinnacle instead of now when it's
Yeah.
get me out of here.
Yeah.
Well, back in the day when I did it, there was only the Tonight Show. If you wanted to be a successful comedian, you had to go through the Tonight Show. Unlike today, where there's so many other different routes that you could take with so many different media platforms that can possibly launch a career. For decades, the only way a comedian could become a celebrity was to go through the Tonight Show. You had to go through the Tonight Show. So everybody was just, trying to put together, 5-minute set, a tight 5 minutes to get on the Tonight Show. Because if you did well, and they brought you back, and you've got a career.
Yeah.
So
that's it. Then you get to go and do the thing.
But there was nothing else. I mean, there were smaller shows. There was a lot more variety back then. There wasn't really cable was just in its infancy back then. There was so much less variety of entertainment today. Today, it's just overwhelming.
What I'd love you to do, if you don't mind, is...
I can't lend you any money if that's the next thing that's going to come out of your mouth.
If it's possible for you to walk us through as much of that, the first time that you did The Tonight Show, if you can walk us through the process of, you putting together the 5 minutes.
Like, when did you find out you were going to get to go on?
Here's why: because I just rewatched Comedian, Jerry Seinfeld's documentary that they have on Netflix.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if have you ever seen it?
Yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah, and most of that is about him putting together time to go and do the Tonight Show or do Letterman, and then Orny Adams also doing the same thing, and watching these two people trying to perfect it, and it was so completely different. The way that Seinfeld handled trying to do it, and the way that Orny handled trying to do it were so different. I just kind of wanted to hear how you did it.
Actually, I used to do this piece of material that I did in a show called The National Lampoon Show. It was called The Comedian, and it was written by Brian Doyle Murray, by Bill Murray's brother.
Yeah.
And it's this long, convoluted monologue that a comedian. It's a presentation piece, and they say, "Please welcome the comedian," and I come out like in a tuxedo, and the bit goes, thank you very much, you're beautiful, thank you. A man walks into a nightclub with a beautiful girl on his arm. The show begins and the comedian comes out for his first show of the evening. Comedian says, a man walks into a nightclub with a beautiful girl on his arm. The show begins. Comedian comes out for his second show of the evening. Comedian says, a man walks into a nightclub with a beautiful girl on his arm. The man in the front row says, just a minute, I think I heard this before. Comedian says, well, maybe you caught my first show of the evening. The man says, no, I just walked in here. Well, it could have been you. A guy looked just like you, walked into the nightclub with a beautiful girl on his arm. It could have been your twin brother. The man says, my twin brother's dead. The comedian says, what is this, a wake? The man says, I don't have to stand for this, and he stands up and he walks out of the nightclub out onto the sidewalk. Comedian says, are you out there? I can hear you breathing. The man says, I'm holding my breath. Comedian says, well, I'm holding your wife. Just then, a man comes walking back into the nightclub with another beautiful girl on his arm. Comedian says, who is this beautiful girl I'm seeing you with? The man says, this is my wife, and that's my dead twin brother's wife. You could take her if you want. Comedian says, not unless you say please. Just then, a man comes riding into the nightclub on a pony with a feather in his hat. Comedian says, what do you call that? He says, an entrance. But forget about that, he says, and give my pony a jockey. Well, the bartender says, I think your pony's had enough already. He says, well, then make it a short jockey. And while you're at it, give that lady's lawyer some briefs. Well, the lady stands up. I'm defending myself, Your Honor. The lawyer stands up. I'm defending Her Honor, Your Honor. The judge says, says, honor or offer, make up your mind. Comedian says, honor, it's the best offer I've had all day. Take it or leave it. He says, couldn't we just drop it? He says, you got to drop leaflets before you bomb. Comedian says, I'm already bombing. He says, well, maybe it's your material. Comedian says, you don't think it fits? He says, well, it could be let out a little bit. He says, how much will it cost? He says, it'll cost you an arm and a leg. He says, could you put it on the cuff? He says, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll just charge you the arm. I'll forget about the leg. He says, all right, and he cuts off the comedian's arm, and a beautiful arm it is, and he gives him the suit. Taylor calls his girlfriend to go out for a night on the town. He calls her and he brings her the beautiful arm as a gift. She wears it around her neck like a stole, and they go out for a night on the town. Man walks into a nightclub with a beautiful arm on his girl. A one-armed comedian comes out for his last show of the evening, and the audience gives him a hand.
There we go.
I cannot believe I remember that.
Wow.
I cannot believe I remember
Oh
that.
my God. That is unbelievable.
So Brian Doyle Murray wrote that, and I performed that in the National Lampoon show.
Oh my God.
Jim McCauley, with the talent director for the Tonight Show, saw me do that, and he said Johnny would love that. He says you got to do that for Johnny. And Bud Friedman was my manager. He was managing me back then. And Bud knew Brian, and he said I'll talk to Brian. I'll get it approved so you could do it on the Tonight Show. And unfortunately, Bud never did it. He never did it, and then I finally lost my appetite for doing it because I didn't write it in the first place, and I wanted to do something that I wrote. So I presented Macaulay with something else that I had done, and he approved that, and I did that.
Wow!
But that's how I got it. He wanted me to do something else that Brian Doyle Murray had written. Which was a brilliant piece.
It's a great piece.
I swear to God, I have not done that in so many years.
Oh my God!
I can't,
flawless, man.
I can't believe I remembered it.
Yeah, because it's like
that's amazing.
You hardly have time to take a breath when you're doing that. It's just like
stream
of consciousness.
It's just relentless.
Yeah,
it's just relentless.
And there's so much good wordplay in that kind of bit. That's great.
Yeah,
it's so good.
It's a brilliant piece.
Did he write that for you to do?
No. He wrote it for him. He did it. He did it in the National Lampoon show, and they kept the material, and most of the cast of the National Lampoon show went into the original Saturday Night Live.
Yeah,
right.
Bill Murray, Chevy Chase, Brian Doyle Murray, Belushi, Gilda. They were they all came out of the National Lampoon show.
Wow!
And then when the cast moved from the National Lampoon over to Saturday Night Live, they did a traveling bus and truck show around the country that I did it with Meatloaf and with Meatloaf and Jim Steinman. Jim Steinman, who wrote "Bad Out of Hell."
Yeah,
wrote the album for, and that was a trip being on the road with those guys.
Wow,
it was a lot of fun though.
That's amazing, man.
Yeah.
You've got such fucking great stories.
So you get the Tonight Show. They tell you, okay, finally, you've got your regular material. We approve this. We want you to do it for Johnny. So what is that day like when you know, I'm probably going to be a household name tomorrow? Like, what is that feeling got to be?
Well, I knew it was the biggest opportunity that I've had thus far in my life, and to say it's not nerve-wracking, even though you're confident in what you're doing, you've done it hundreds of times. When you walk out on that Tonight Show set, and it's brightly lit, unlike a comedy club, which is dark and intimate, and you've got all these lights on you, and you're just not used to working in that much light, and that kind of vulnerable exposure. When you're out there vulnerable under the spotlight in front of a live audience,
right?
And you know that it's going out to millions and millions of people that are watching this. So it's something that you really have to have to adapt to.
Because the nerves have to really kick in there, and that's got to be at that point. Like, if you're doing a show, I mean, I've done this 15 years. Steven's done it about 14 years, I think, stand-up. It's like, I don't get nervous for shows anymore.
Right.
But a show like that, I imagine, it's just got to really just all of a sudden a feeling you haven't had in a long time that you have to press through.
Yeah, you can't. I couldn't imagine not being nervous.
One of the reasons that Matt is such a good friend of mine is
he owes you money.
He does. He does owe me some money. Is the first time I ever taped anything that was like gonna be aired anywhere, like a stand-up thing. It was for Hulu, and Matt came to the taping, and I was about to go on stage in front of all these cameras, and I was very, 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 very nervous. And I said to him, I'm so fucking nervous. And he went, just remember this. No matter how good a performance you do, your father will still not love you. And it took it all away. It took all the nerves out of me. And I was like, you're fucking right. And then I went and had a great set. Yeah. But it was like the first time where I was like, oh, it may be a good idea to have an asshole friend, because that can help, because the fucking nerves.
He still doesn't.
He still doesn't.
No.
Yeah, no. But I get nervous for fun. I get nervous for everything. I get nervous for almost every set that I do. And if I'm not nervous before a show, I feel like something's not gonna be good.
Yeah, I might get a tiny bit of nerves if it's like. Because I don't often get spots at the Improv, right? So I got to do a spot because some comic dropped out and I just happened to be at the club. They're like, hey, you want to go on right now? And that's the thing where you're like, okay, I haven't had time to even think about what I'm going to do. It's like, oh, in 30 seconds, I'm on stage telling jokes. I was a little nervous for that one just because it was like, all right, let's see how much on autopilot I can really do this thing. And it was great. But that's the kind of thing where I get a little nervous at that. But if I have time to prepare, I don't care anymore. Wow. But also I'm not doing the Tonight Show, which is next level.
I can only imagine. Yeah. Well, I mean, and with Johnny of all fucking people.
Yeah.
So did you do it multiple times after that, or what happened after that?
I did two Tonight shows.
Mm-hmm.
Neither of them were great. The first one was good enough to get me back on the second time.
Mm-hmm.
But I just the second time I just it wasn't as good as the first time, and it had to be better than the first time. But I did it twice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember
it's amazing.
I think it was we talked to Tom Dreesen, and he talked about because he did that show 40 times or whatever. It's and he was like. He's like, I don't have any more jokes to tell. He's like, what am I? He's like, he had the Tonight Show booked, and it was a week before, and he's like, I don't know what I'm going to do on the show because I've burned every bit of material I have on the Tonight Show already. So it's like,
Jesus.
When you get that many, it's crazy.
A lot of Tonight shows.
Yeah, he
used to open for Sinatra.
Yeah.
He's an interesting character too, for sure.
Have you had him on the podcast?
Yeah.
Oh, he's great.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he's got some amazing stories.
Yeah, he does. He is an interesting fellow. We've had him. Who else? What other guy?
Alan Stevens.
Alan Stevens.
A lot of good stuff to talk about.
Yeah.
That guy is a trip and a half. Yeah. Well, we did a show with him once at the Improv, and he said he was third on the lineup, and he goes, he had hit he was supposed to do 15 minutes, and he hit 20. We got to 20, and he goes, who's on the show next? And we go, next up is this guy, and he goes,
some random comment.
You know what? I'm staying up here. I'm having too good a time. Kept going, and then 5 minutes later, we were flashing him the light, and he was like, I get it. Who is it? No. I'm staying. And he was just was fucking with us. And then finally he got off. But he was
he's still on.
Yeah. He's still on right now.
He's
still doing stand-up. He's very funny and very mean. But I love that guy. He's great.
Yeah.
Do you have social media? Do you do the Twitter and the Instagram and that stuff?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter.
Yeah.
At the Real Barry Diamond.
Well, audience, go follow Barry Diamond on the shows, and then
I have a website, barrydiamond.com.
Fantastic. Fantastic. And if you have any, do you have any shows that are coming up right now? Anything?
I'm doing a show tomorrow night in Indio.
Nice.
At a place called Trilogy.
Oh, very cool.
In
Indio. If you're down to come do some shows with us, we'll get you on.
Absolutely, for sure.
Terrific,
Yeah.
Terrific stuff.
Stay in touch. Don't be a stranger.
I won't, Mr. Diamond. I will.
Stop
I
asking
will not.
to borrow money from me, for God's sake.
Are you sure it's the real Barry Diamond on Twitter?
Well, you know, we're gonna
doesn't come
tag.
up. All right.
We're gonna tag you in all the
I'll
all
find
the
it.
stuff. We got it. Matt, where can people find you?
You can find links to everything at funnymatt.com, or if you're a former San Francisco Giants pitcher, you can let me know that you don't appreciate me making fun of you at mattwalkersucks.com, as happened this week.
That people got very upset with you this week. You can always get me at Stephen Glickman, STPHEN Glickman, on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe to the Nighttime Show podcast and comment and let us know how much you love us, because we love you. Barry, thank you for doing this.
Thank you, darling. Next year in Israel.
Next year in the Holy Land.
In Jerusalem, sweetheart. Okay? You dress warm because it may be cold.
I may need to leave my coat with you.
Oh, for sure.
Stand up in front.